This is way better than we thought, as the Toronto Raptors selected Collin Murray-Boyles with the number 9 overall selection, despite Collin Murray-Boyles still being on the board. As once again, Masai Ujiri shocked everyone with his draft selection, but this pick is way better than people initially thought when it went down, because I was live out there in this video. People were concerned, people were surprised, and especially coupled with his initial reaction to getting selected by the Toronto Raptors that initially came off as, oh, he doesn't want to be here. There were a lot of fans that were concerned about, oh no, did we make a mistake for this pick despite tanking for another full season? Did we make a mistake with one of the more crucial picks in Toronto Raptors history? That doesn't seem to be the case, as watching this man's highlights, hearing this man speak about joining the Toronto Raptors, there is a lot to get very, very excited about, and there are some things in his game which, frankly, I'm not going to, of course, declare him a steal by any stretch of the imagination here now at this point, but there are signs of this being really just another masterclass by Masai Ujiri. Not going to label it that just yet till we see him in Summer League, till we see him out there in the Toronto Raptors uniform and all that stuff, but there are things to get excited about for Collin Murray-Boyles. So we're going to dive into all of that in this video. But folks, I want to thank each and every single one of you today, because this morning we were lower, but we're at this mark. We hit the 38,000 subscriber mark here now at this point. So, made a big jump today. I appreciate everyone that's been tuning into the channel for all of these years. And, we're hitting milestones on big nights of the Toronto Raptors. So appreciate everyone getting us this 38,000 subscriber mark. Of course, the next big metric is that big 40,000. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button just yet and you want to stay up to date with everything with this team, make sure you guys hit that sub button. But let's dive into the news, because of course the Raptors ended up drafting Collin Murray-Boyles, who is a guy that, again, we'll take a look, we'll dive through everything in terms of how Raptors fans are feeling and why this is a lot better than people were expecting, because Murray-Boyles is a guy that plays the power forward and center position at just 6'7". 6'8", he's listed as different things wherever you look. So, take it, 6'7", between 6'7" and 6'8". So he has a 7-foot wingspan, and he's 20 years old. So not old for a draft prospect by any means, but a little bit older than some of these guys that are out there in the league, from the United States, and was projected to go a little bit after where the Raptors were selecting. And you take a look at his stats, and this is where a lot of the concerns were picked up with this initial selection, is specifically his jump shooting. Because you have a 6'7" player that plays the forward spot, you want him to be a knockdown shooter. It's a modern NBA, you need to be able to shoot to stay out there on the court. And he shoots just 27% from the three-point line, and had a viral video going around with him just selling threes over and over again in one of those draft combines. So that wrote a lot of people off as a fit for the Toronto Raptors, just given his poor shooting and given it being the modern NBA. And I'm not blaming people on the surface level. I'm one of those people at the surface level that just didn't expect him to be the Raptors selection number 9, especially if a guy like Collin Murray-Boyles was still available, who of course is the 7-foot center that we've been discussing for months on end. But what has made people kind of change on this? Because another thing coupled with this is on his initial draft reaction, he let out a little cuss, he let out a little frustration. His girlfriend was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" or something. It was watching the video in context in the wrong setting. It looked like, hey, he doesn't want to be in Toronto. But that doesn't, given his interviews, given his comments, and honestly, just given the context when he broke it down, that couldn't be further from the truth. So let's dive into those comments basically at first. Because as Josh Loomer put it, the cameras caught Collin Murray-Boyles dropping an F-bomb when he was drafted. He clarifies it was just disbelief. Toronto is the first team that I worked out for. What I said is not a bad thing. I'm just very thankful. That was a surreal moment. This organization has a good history. So, and he made more comments on the Toronto Raptors thing. I'm super excited. I know how passionate the fans are, how diverse the city is. To see that and be around that environment on a daily basis is something it's going to make me a better player. That environment is amazing. The city is great. So CMB is a guy that's, very much someone that seems excited to be joining the Toronto Raptors. Comments about, being on this team, being on the squad isn't indicative of some guy that was frustrated. And genuinely, I wouldn't be shocked if he had no idea he was getting drafted the Toronto Raptors, because frankly, no one had an idea. It was all Noah Essengate, and it was all Collin Murray-Boyles. That's what everyone was expecting the Toronto Raptors to do here now at this point with the number 9 overall pick. So CMB is probably just coming out there like, whoa, dropping the left bomb. I'm going to Toronto. That's crazy. You know what I mean? So, that's the context in terms of the video that's going around. So I get why people are frustrated initially and why that might rub people the wrong way initially. But given this, it's, a sign, like, I'm not taking that any bit seriously, given how he came off in the interviews and seemed very genuine out there on that front. So that's the first thing. So that's better than we thought in terms of that initial reaction. But who is he as an actual basketball player? Because, of course, that's the most important thing going on right now when you have the number 9 overall pick. So essentially, he said, in addition to his defensive mindset, he takes pride in his high IQ and adaptability. Obviously, everybody talks about the shot, and that's something I've been fine-tuning. I'm just trying to get to the point where it's consistent. I'm confident with it right now. So he's been improving his jump shot. He came out and said that, he started his draft process 2 weeks earlier than most and working on his shooting mechanics. It's been a challenge, not in a bad way, but that's the main thing every day. Getting shots up, trying to focus on my form. I feel that type of comfort, and that's what I've been wanting. So he has been very adamant about improving his jump shot because that's the biggest concern with him right now. Shooting 26% from the three-point line, that is genuinely concerning. That's something that needs to be improved if he's going to be getting consistent run out there in the NBA. So, he wants to be on the court, especially a Darko Rajaković system, spacing around, playing alongside a guy like Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, and whoever the heck is on this team. Jakob Poeltl, of course, is going to be the center spot. There's not a ton of shooting on this Raptors squad, so you need guys that are going to be able to come in and have that three-point shot online. So, Scottie Barnes can slash, so RJ Barrett can slash, so IQ can slash, or whoever the heck is on this team. Brandon Ingram has space to operate. So that's nice to hear that he's working on that jump shot. It's something that is coming together a little bit. And he said, I've been a role player. I've been a guy that comes off the bench. I've been the guy. So I've done it all. Whatever the coach needs me to do, just find my role early and help the team win. So I love that attitude, because the Raptors do have a lot of guys in this position. And that was my initial, in terms of the shock, in terms of everything that was going on with, him as a basketball player and all of that type of stuff, right? The one concern, right? It's like, what are we doing if we have this pick, if we have this selection, and we take a guy, in CMB that is a player that plays the same position as, what we've had going for this Raptor squad for the last little while. Of course, we have Scottie Barnes, we have Brandon Ingram that play the same position. Ochai Agbaji is a very similar basketball player. You have Jonathan Mobo, who's been developing, who's been coming to his own and everything like that. So does the fit make a ton of sense? Right now, that shouldn't matter for the Toronto Raptors. We were the 12th seed, whatever the heck we were last season. We weren't good last year. Now, we are expected to be good for this upcoming season and all that, but we haven't proven that just yet. So with your ideally last lottery pick for a very long time, to make trades and stuff, but being bad enough to have your own pick in the lottery, you take the best player available, and then you figure it out for the future. We've seen with all the rumors, with all the news, with all the buzz, this team is flexible. They're flexible in terms of what they can get going for this team. So getting a CMB in terms of being a piece, coming in, if we think he's the best guy, has the most upside, which defensively, if you watch this man's highlights, if you Google, just see Collin Murray-Boyles defensive highlights out there, he is an absolute monster on the defensive end, and he has a really good feel on the offensive end too, in terms of his ability to pass, facilitate at that mid spot. I mean, Draymond Green is a big comparison he's getting thrown out to. Of course, we have Mobo, but that's three guys, Scottie Barnes, Jonathan Mobo, and CMB now at this point, that are very high IQ basketball players, and you can't have enough of those guys on your roster. So this selection is a lot better than we thought. I'm not declaring it a steal just yet because of the number 9 overall selection. You got to be able to hit stuff there, but I'm seeing some flash, especially if the jump shot comes together. Then this is a whole different story for this guy as a basketball player. He's a complete player, if that three-point shot comes into its own. But overall, good selection by Masai Ujiri. We'll pan out. We'll find out over the next few years, I'd imagine. But anyways, you guys are the best thing this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers. Thanks for 38K. Love you all.